Okay, so today we're tackling Canada's housing affordability puzzle. And it is a puzzle, right?
It really is.
Buyers, sellers, renters. Everyone's feeling it. So what we're diving into today is this report. It lays out a whole bunch of ways to tackle this crisis without totally freaking out homeowner investments.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is it really stresses that a balanced approach is key, right? Like you can't just deal with demand or supply.
Right.
They're totally like intertwined.
They are. It's all connected. It's
Yeah.
like a seesaw, you know?
Mhm.
If you push down too hard on one side and you're not even paying attention to the other side,
Exactly.
it's going to go wonky.
Mm-hmm.
So how does this report suggest we find that, that sweet spot?
Well, one of the key things they talk about is streamlining building approvals,
Right.
but not just, waving a magic wand and saying, make it faster. More like using technology. Think digital permitting systems, clear timelines, making that whole process faster, but also more transparent.
So instead of having blueprints, like gathering dust in a city planner's office somewhere,
Exactly.
it's all getting digitized.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it. But, how long do permits even take right now? Just so people can, wrap their heads around what the impact of this could be.
I mean, right now, think months,
Oh,
sometimes even years in certain areas.
oh my gosh.
So yeah, streamlining could be huge.
Yeah.
And here's where it gets really interesting. That faster process ties directly into another strategy. The report talks about incentivizing affordable housing.
Okay. Incentivizing affordable housing. Break that down a bit. What does that actually look like in, real life?
Think tax breaks. So for example, developers, they might get a reduction in property taxes if they include a certain percentage of affordable units in a new building.
Okay.
A mix of incentives like that and some regulations as well.
So it's like you gotta sweeten the pot a little bit. right?
Exactly.
To get people to play ball. Okay. Now, the report also mentions mixed income communities a lot, which honestly, that kind of feels like a buzzword to me.
It does.
With the deeper dive on that, what does that actually mean?
It's more than just a buzzword. It's really about intentionally designing neighborhoods where people with, different income levels can actually afford to live.
Okay.
So imagine a development that has market rate apartments and then some units that are specifically for low-income families and maybe even some townhouses with rent-to-own options.
Oh, interesting.
It's about creating communities that are more diverse, more balanced.
And hopefully avoiding those situations where, a whole neighborhood basically becomes Millionaire's Row.
Yeah, exactly. It's about options and opportunities for everyone, not just a select few.
Okay, yeah. Let's wade into maybe some slightly choppier waters here for a second.
Okay.
Immigration.
Mm-hmm.
It's always a hot topic,
It is.
especially when it comes to housing.
For sure.
How does this report address that?
It's delicate, but it is important to highlight this report isn't calling for these huge cuts to immigration.
Right.
It's about carefully aligning those immigration targets with what the housing market can actually handle.
Okay, so it's about making sure that as people come to Canada, which, let's be real, that's part of what makes Canada Canada, right? But making sure we've got enough roofs for everybody.
Precisely. And some countries are already doing this. They're tying the number of skilled worker visas they issue to the actual availability of housing in those job sectors.
Oh, interesting.
So it's about sustainability, balance.
Sustainability, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
We can't just ignore how population growth
Yeah.
impacts housing, whether it's newcomers or, people just having more kids, right?
Yeah.
There's more humans, we need more places to put them.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. But let's be honest, there's also the whole issue of speculation, right? Driving up prices.
Yeah.
Does the report address that at all?
It does. It tackles it head on, actually.
Yeah.
Think increased property taxes on vacant homes.
Okay.
Those ones that nobody's even living in.
Right.
Potentially even foreign buyer taxes, which we've seen in some form in cities like Vancouver.
Yeah. So hitting those speculative buyers where it hurts their wallets.
Right.
Interesting. But does that actually work? Have those kinds of taxes actually been effective in other places?
They can be effective. It's all about finding that balance, right?
Right.
Discouraging people who are just looking to make a quick buck, but not scaring away, healthy investment.
Right.
Vancouver's foreign buyer tax, it did cool down their market, at least for a little bit.
Interesting.
But the key here is none of this is about punishing people who already own homes.
Okay.
It's about creating a system that's a bit more stable, a bit more of an even playing field.
So less about bursting bubbles, more about like gently letting the air out. Okay, got it. And speaking of keeping things stable, the report also talks about protecting existing homeowner investments. How do you balance that with making housing more affordable? Like, those almost feel like contradictory ideas.
And that's where the kind of gradual, well thought out implementation comes in, and this report really stresses that.
Okay.
It's not about just flipping a switch and throwing the whole market into chaos.
Right.
It's about making these strategic, predictable changes so that, things don't snowball out of control.
So no October surprises for the housing market.
Exactly.
Okay, got it. Now, before we go too deep on, like, the whole ownership side of things, I did notice the report spends quite a bit of time on rentals, too.
Yeah.
Which, let's be real, it's its own beast entirely these days.
Rentals are huge. And the report gets into some really interesting stuff there. One that I thought was really interesting was encouraging more purpose-built rentals.
Okay.
So, imagine a building that's designed from the ground up for
Yeah.
renters. Maybe it's got co-working spaces. Maybe it has on-site childcare. Maybe it even has units that are designed for accessibility. You don't always get those things in a condo that somebody's just kind of renting out on the side.
Yeah, it makes sense. So it's less about just, like, making do with whatever happens to be on the market. It's about actually, like, intentionally building places that are for people to rent long term.
Exactly. And they talk about offering incentives to developers to actually go out and build these purpose-built rentals.
Okay.
The idea being you boost the supply, but in a way that's specifically targeted towards that rental market.
Okay, so purpose-built rentals, got it.
Yeah.
Anything else in there for the renters out there?
Another big one is expanding rent-to-own programs.
Okay.
They suggest these could be a real game changer for folks who are kind of stuck in that frustrating gap between renting and owning.
Yeah.
So imagine if a portion of your rent was actually going towards like a future down payment.
So that's cool.
It could make homeownership feel a lot more attainable.
It's like a built-in savings plan, but it also gets you, the roof over your head in the meantime.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
It makes the whole, like, homeownership dream feel like a little less dreamy.
Exactly. It's about making that a reality for more people.
Yeah.
And that's really what this whole report is about, right?
Yeah.
Creating a housing market that works for everyone, not just a select few, a system that's more fair, more accessible, and ultimately more sustainable in the long run.
And speaking of the long run, the report talks a lot about the need for a long-term vision,
Yeah.
a national housing strategy.
Right.
What's the thinking there? Why is that so important?
It's about getting away from those Band-Aid solutions,
Right.
Like instead of just reacting to every crisis as it pops up,
Yeah.
it's about trying to get ahead of it.
Okay.
So think like population growth projections,
Mm-hmm.
economic trends, even like environmental concerns. How do we bring all of that into the equation?
Yeah.
A national strategy tries to kind of wrangle all of that into one cohesive plan.
So it's less about, like, constantly putting out fires and more about, like, fireproofing the whole darn house.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. But that also sounds incredibly complicated.
It is.
Like, where do you even begin with something that big?
Well, it starts with, understanding the problem.
Right.
Understanding all those different interconnected parts that we've been talking about.
All right.
And that's really what this whole deep dive gives us, right?
Yeah.
It gives us a starting point.
Yeah.
We've looked at some of the different strategies, explored some potential solutions, and hopefully what we've done is kind of painted a clearer picture of just how complex this whole thing really is.
Complex is an understatement.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's a lot to process.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, even though this can feel like such an overwhelming topic,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I'm walking away with a little bit of, like, a sliver of optimism.
Okay.
Because it's like, okay, there's no magic wand, right?
Yeah.
But there are smart, well-thought-out strategies out there.
There are. And we can't forget, this isn't just some like abstract policy debate.
Right.
This is about real people who are being priced out of their own city,
Yeah,
stressing about finding a decent and affordable place to rent,
totally.
watching that dream of homeownership just like slip further and further away.
Totally. It's easy to get, like, lost in the weeds with reports like this.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it is about people's lives.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what makes these solutions, even the ones that feel really complicated, worth fighting for.
Mm-hmm.
A stable, affordable housing market, it's not just good for the economy.
Mm-hmm.
It's good for everyone.
Couldn't agree more. It's about creating a society where, everyone has the opportunity to thrive, not
Sure.
just survive.
Well said. So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's bring it back to you listening. We've explored a ton of potential path forward today. We've looked at all these different levers that, policymakers could pull. But if you were advising them, what would you prioritize?
Right.
Where do you see the biggest potential for impact? What trade-offs are you willing to accept to actually get there?
It's a big question.
It is a big question. It's a lot to chew on, but hey, that's what deep dives are all about.